It is redemption road time for BYU football. The Cougars have everything to play for it, and it all starts Saturday against TCU.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. Proud to be part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is America's #1 sports podcast network. Thank you, as always, for joining us. I'm Jake Hatch, executive producer of the KSL Sports Zone in Salt Lake City, Utah, and a 14-year credentialed media member at BYU. I am your resident expert and insider, your host here on this podcast. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Coming up on today's show, football. BYU, TCU, the Cougars ranked 12th in the country, looking to get themselves back into the college football playoff hunt. Well, everything they hope to accomplish is still attainable, and it all starts, in theory, with a win at LES on Saturday night. We'll dig into that. We'll catch up with BYU passing game coordinator and wide receivers coach Fesi Sitake, an exclusive one-on-one chat you will not hear anywhere else. And we'll finish up today's show talking about two things that are out there in the ether that could prove to be headwinds for BYU as they try, as I mentioned, to get back on the redemption road. It's all brought to you today by our friends over at Woodward Park City. We'll tell you a little bit more about them as this special edition of Locked On Cougars rolls on. All right, so BYU is back home in the friendly confines of Lavelle Edwards Stadium for the penultimate home game of the 2025 season tomorrow night when they take on the TCU Horned Frogs. I am very eager to see how BYU responds. I have spent all week talking about the redemption arc for BYU football, and what that entails is BYU has used the phrase good to great. They were a good team in 2024. They want to be a great team in 2025, and the distinction in their minds is last year 11-2, knocking on the door of the college football playoff, but ultimately not realizing that option and also not playing in the Big 12 title game in Arlington, Texas. They want to accomplish those two things in particular this year. That means going to Arlington in early December with a chance to win the Big 12 title, and then B, if you can, play in the college football playoff. All of those things are still attainable for BYU despite their blowout loss to Texas Tech a week ago. Now it starts against the TCU Horned Frogs. Looking at this game on its head, I believe that we are going to learn the most about BYU of this stretch run in this game tomorrow night, because if they can go out and handle their business against TCU and, heaven forbid, blow out the Horned Frogs, they will have shown that they have learned their lesson from a season ago. Because remember, when they let that disappointing loss to Kansas fester the following week and lead into a pretty lackluster first half performance against Arizona State, BYU saw those back-to-back losses ultimately doom them in their run towards the Big 12 title game, as I mentioned, the college football playoff, etc. Now, there are other people out there on the outside, Shahan Jayaraja from CBS Sports, among others of national media members, Spencer McLaughlin, our good friend at Locked On College Football, who believe that BYU should have been more in the conversation for the CFP a season ago, and believe if BYU handles their business down the stretch run of this season, they'll be shouting it from the rooftops that BYU deserves at-large consideration at the very worst. I appreciate all that. But the biggest thing BYU can do to bolster their chance of playing in the college football playoff and playing for a Big 12 title is go handle your business. And that means winning. Win and you are in. It's a very simple phrase, but that's exactly what BYU has to keep in mind with this matchup. We caught up with Darian Gray, host of Locked On Horned Frogs, yesterday. If you missed it, if you were an everydayer, and he talked about the fact that this is a program, speaking of TCU, that is essentially centralized around the heroics and Studley play of Josh Hoover. And I say Studley because Josh Hoover is an absolute dude. I think he's an incredible quarterback. But if BYU can limit him, if they can shut down TCU's run game, they should be able to win this football game. TCU is not a Leviathan. They are not a world beater, but they are dangerous. They saw their chance, unless something completely crazy happens, for a Big 12 title go out the window a week ago when they lost to Iowa State at home. So they have been relegated now to essentially spoiler status. They can come in to Provo with the mindset of, okay, well, Iowa State wrecked our season. Let's go wreck BYU's. And TCU has other games on the docket down the stretch here, Houston and Cincinnati, who they also can wreck their Big 12 title hopes for those other programs, but it starts with BYU tomorrow night. This is going to be a game BYU has to be wary of, but at the same time, play loose, play like you have played for most of the season, sans that Texas Tech game. Go out there, embrace the 64,000 plus individuals who will populate the stands at LaVell Edwards Stadium and be in full-throated roar to support their beloved Cougars. Embrace all of that and take it to the TCU Horned Frogs. There is no reason to hold anything back in this game. And quite frankly, I'll say it right now, Fesi Sitake, you could do yourself some favors by piling up some style points if afforded the opportunity against the TCU Horned Frogs. And what I mean by that is score touchdowns and score them often, early, late, however they come, pile them up. You need to have a little bravado out there. I know that Kalani Sitake is an absolute gentleman. He's a scholar. He wants nothing more than for BYU to be respected for the way that they treat the teams that they play against. But right now, trying to get back into the national consciousness, move yourself up in the college football playoff rankings, all the different things that go into what BYU hopes to accomplish this season, a nice, tidy blowout win would do wonders, it feels like, in this individual circumstance. If, like I said, if afforded the opportunity to do so. I do not expect TCU to come in here and roll over and die. I just do not expect that. This is too proud a program. Speaking of Sonny Dykes' program, they played in a national championship game not that long ago. They have got very, very talented athletes, and they're going to come to BYU, as I mentioned, with the mindset of, okay, our season may be wrecked. Let's go wreck somebody else's. BYU has got everything ahead of them. They've got everything to play for. And based on the injury reports out there, BYU is relatively healthy. LJ Martin is expected to go in this game. Parker Kingston was not on the injury report, so you expect him to go. Bear Bachmeier, I'm fully expecting him to bounce back and hopefully bounce back with a strong performance in this game. Flipping over to the defense, we'll see what happens on the front line. Anisi Purcell, who missed last week, should be back this week to bolster that defensive line depth alongside John Taumea-Peau and a guy like Keanu Tanuvasa. BYU's linebacking core, it's been absolutely awesome to watch what Jack Kelly, Isaiah Glasser, Cialia Serra, etc. have put on the field. They have got to go out there and own this game. And on the back end for BYU secondary, Tanner Wall, Raider Demouni, Falatau Satuala, Evan Johnson, Maury Bamba, Trey Alexander. Can they come away with some interceptions? Because I fully expect TCU is going to be reliant on their passing game in this contest. Win the turnover battle, handle your business at home, get back into the win column, and get yourselves back on, as I mentioned, the redemption road towards the college football playoff and the Big 12 title. It's all there for BYU, and I expect BYU is going to bounce back in glorious fashion. I think that BYU is going to be ultra motivated to show that what happened against Texas Tech was a fluke. This may be clipped and I may have my face shoved in it if they don't respond in that way. But I think that BYU learned a hard lesson this season to go in letting things get out of their hands, or leave control of their fate to others out there. They have everything in terms of their control still in their hands right now. They can ill afford to lose control of it now. And I think that BYU will bounce back and do so in pretty dominant fashion. I look at this game, BYU being a 4.5-point favorite from our friends over at FanDuel is the last I saw. I think that's too low. I think BYU wins this by double digits. So give me the BYU Cougars 31, TCU 17, and let's see how the Cougars do on their home turf against the Horned Frogs. All right. Oh, by the way, I also had this. BYU is on a 5-game losing streak to TCU. So that also, I don't know, it extends all the way back to the 20-aughts, but still, handle your business and get the W and get yourself, as I mentioned, back on track towards your ultimate stated goals. All right, coming up next, a guy who's going to have an intricate role to play in this because he coaches up BYU's wide receivers. He also sits in game planning sessions with Aaron Roderick, Kalani Sitake. I'm speaking of Fesi Sitake, BYU's passing game coordinator and wide receivers coach. We talked a lot about what happened against Texas Tech, but also looked a lot forward to what to expect from TCU and a whole lot more. And we'll get to that next right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our new friends over at Woodward. We're just going to say it right now. The fun per foot ratio at Woodward Park City is second to none, everybody. If you've seen Woodward, you know what I'm talking about. It's an absolutely insane facility up there near Park City. Located just 20 minutes from the Salt Lake Valley, Woodward offers experiential learning in a radically fun and safe environment. With facilities for all abilities, the door is always open to first-timers and regulars alike. Bounce from park to pits, ramps to tramps, and back again. Mountain Park season passes are now on sale for just $499. Rip hot laps with a posse after school and into the evening. The best part is you can maximize mountain time this winter at one of the best terrain parks in Utah and do it all season long. Looking to go all in? All access memberships provide just that, from passes to perks, discounts, and a whole lot more. And if you're just starting out learning on the fly with Woodward's Tribe, in seasonal and multi-week programs that help you build skills and confidence in a stoke-inspiring environment are the way to go. The best part is, no matter what age you are, 4 to 17 for the youngsters, even if you're an adult, they've got the options for you guys. Once again, just 20 minutes from Salt Lake, Woodward offers that experiential learning with facilities for all abilities. Learn more today at woodwardparkcity.com. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Hope you all are doing fantastic out there. And thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network America's #1 sports podcast network. All right. Great chance earlier this week to go down to BYU football practice, since I do every single week. Those of you know who are longtime listeners know I'm down there. And I had a great chat with BYU passing game coordinator Fesi Sitake. Now, the thing I love about Fesi is he's a straight shooter, but he also doesn't lose perspective of what BYU's ultimate goals are. And we've talked a lot about those: winning the Big 12 title, playing the college football playoff. Well, we talked about what the lessons he and the guys he has responsibility for, mainly BYU's wide receivers, what they learned from the Texas Tech setback that he believes will spring them forward as they get ready for this game against TCU. And I think he's pretty pointed at saying exactly what needs to happen from his position group, but at the same time, understanding from his years and decades, both as a player and as a coach, that BYU, they can't be too hard on their guys at the same time, because it's just one loss. You got to go out there. You got to play with confidence. You got to inspire that confidence in these players as well. So without further ado, I'll get out of the way. And here's Fesi Sitake right here on Locked On Cougars.
Tough loss to Texas Tech, obviously, but you've had a pretty strong contingent of wide receivers who've been contributing all season long. Just what do you make of their play so far?
Yeah, I've been really proud of them. This last game was a tough one for the group. They all, admittedly, I first could have done a lot better job putting them in a position to be more successful. I failed in a lot of areas, and then on the field, just the product was bad. You know, we had some dropped balls, some missed assignments, a lot of uncharacteristic things. Yeah. And so we've talked, we've huddled up as a group, and we've just chalked it up to that. Like, we took one on the chin. We learned. We got to improve and fix that. But outside of that game, that was an outlier. I've been happy. You know, they haven't been perfect, but I've been happy with their ability to consistently produce, and whatever the game plan is, if it's heavier run or heavier pass, being bought in and to the game plan and playing with energy and effort.
What do you make of, as you look towards the stretch run of the season, what do you want to see from them most coming off of a game? Like you said, you took it on the chin there, but where can they improve the most in your opinion coming off that?
Really just getting back to our brand of football, playing consistent, doing your part. You know, there's some things in the past game that I think, you know, that we'll be able to put on film, stuff that we've been able to execute on, that we've shown throughout the season or maybe in fall camp that works against these guys. You know, we've had a lot of unique defenses week in and week out where we haven't been able to consistently run, you know, the offense we want in terms of the pass game. And so I'm excited for these last couple games to be able to implement some of those things, and hopefully there's some production out there from those guys. But like I said, just back to playing our brand of football, making the big plays, making the big blocks, and just having fun again and putting some points on the board.
Kalani uses the term love and learn. I know it's just a ubiquitous thing around here, and they said this week's a lot more learning than it is loving. What does that entail?
Yeah, just I think the love needs to come. It happens naturally. Like, everyone struggles together. There were a lot of people hurting in the locker room after that game. You could feel it. The love was there. There was frustration, all that. But now it's like, okay, we got to learn from those mistakes now. I think it's already it's known that we love each other. You don't go, 8-1, despite the one, scar we have there. Like, you don't win those games unless you have a culture of love. And so now it's, after that kind of a loss, let's learn from all the mistakes, the things we need to improve on, and the love's always going to be there, and let's go show who we really are again on Saturday.
As you guys move forward, a guy like Chase is coming down kind of the stretch run. What has stood out the most about this season for him as previous seasons maybe?
Just his consistency. I mean, the leadership as well. I mean, the guy is. I wish I could clone 100 Chases, man. He does everything right. He epitomizes BYU, what we're looking for, the type of character you're looking for, the type of leader, and then he just happens to be a really good football player who's got great sizes and measurables, and so it's just he's the all-around package, and that's been what's most impressive is he's always had flashes in his whole career. But now he's been able to just consistently put things together, and the way he's doing it and how he leads is just what I'm always proud of with him.
He made some headlines with his comments after the game, such as saying, "We want another crack at these guys." And I took it from my vantage point, like that's exactly the mentality you want. You want another crack because you took one, as you mentioned earlier on the chin, and you want another chance at those guys.
Yeah. That's his competitive nature, and people can spin that however they want and interpret it as, oh well, you got more games and you got it. Yeah, that's just his way of saying, as nice of a guy as I am, as much as I'm all into this culture and I love and learn, like I'm competitive too, and I'm a dog, and I want to see those guys again. That's what any winner would want to say that. And so like I know his intent in that, his teammates knows his intent in that, and we'll leave it to social media to distort his words.
As you look towards TCU this weekend, Andy Avalos has been a well-traveled defensive coordinator. Just what do you see from tape from the Horned Frogs?
Yeah, they play hard. They pursue to the ball. You can tell that they got a lot of scheme, and kind of game by game they have some themes that make it really difficult. He does a great job self-scouting, and then also scouting the opponent and what our tendencies are. And so we have to do a great job with self-scout, saying what are we doing in these formations? What does this backfield alignment show? Because he's dialed. He'll bring pressures and do stuff with the front that's problematic for those things. And so it's part of the learning process, right? This week, focusing on learning us as a staff of what can we do, because they do a good job with that. Personnel-wise, they got skills. TCU, they've always had skill. They play hard. We're excited for a great matchup. A lot of their games they very well could be where we are. We've had close games where we've been able to find a way to finish, and there's the couple that they have they weren't able to, so we could very well be in different switch places. So yeah.
You talk about self-scouting. How much can you do that in a game week versus maybe like a bye week where you have a little extra time? Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. You get a lot more obviously in a bye week, but in a short week, I think a lot of it happens. We get Sundays off. It's one of the greatest parts of being here. But at home, we're still thinking about things, and that's naturally where you can tee a lot of stuff up. And then on Monday we come in is when we're putting the game plan together. Yeah. So I think a lot of our guys just kind of find a little bit of time on a Sunday or Monday when we're all doing our individual deal. We have a sheet as well that we have, a template and the software that allows us to be efficient in breaking those those tendencies down in what we do. And so we're all in those together. We get different eyes on different things, and we come together and we report on these are the things we need to protect.
As guys like Parker and JoJo, they're kind of the other lead dogs alongside Chase. What kind of your message to them been after this game against Texas Tech?
Just like, don't let a team beat you twice. Like, we still have everything we want to accomplish.
Does that go for the whole team? I imagine.
It goes for the whole team, right? We have everything. We're still in a great position. We still have everything we want in front of us, but all that matters is TCU. That's what I told those guys. You guys are some of the leaders of this team, and people are going to go off how you carry yourself. So don't focus on this last game. Don't talk about Big 12 championship. Don't talk about TCU. They deserve all of our attention and respect, and they're going to get it. And so I think they've done a great job. All the leaders in my room and on the team just latching onto that message, that Kalani's given as a whole is let's go get these guys. And it's a 3-game season from here.
A big thank you to Fesi Sitake as well as BYU Athletic Communications for arranging that interview. And you heard him talk about it. He wants his guys to play out there with confidence, but he expects obviously more from them coming out of that Texas Tech game. And his comments, the way that Fesi, I think, addressed things, make me think that BYU understands that they know where they screwed up. They screwed up in a big way against Texas Tech, and they want another crack at the Red Raiders if afforded that opportunity, but they have to earn that right. And the only way to earn that right is to reel off 3 straight wins here. And that's what BYU has to focus on. They focus on TCU tomorrow, get ready next week for Cincinnati, and then the following week, finish it off with UCF. And then, maybe then, you get that chance against Texas Tech. If you screw up along the path that I just described, well, that gets taken out of your hands. And I think BYU, they have every intention of getting another crack at Texas Tech and putting on a better product if they get that chance. But it was really cool to hear Fesi talk about both the good, the bad, and in some cases, the ugly from that Texas Tech win, but what they can do to improve as they now look towards this TCU showdown. So as always, once again, a big thank you to Fesi, and always a big thank you to you guys for your support of this podcast, because these are the conversations that I strive to bring to you guys literally every single day. All right. We'll finish up today's show coming up next. We have a national writer having to apologize to BYU and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We have a rival AD taking over the college football playoff committee that, could impact BYU's chances at the CFP. We'll talk about those two things as you wrap up this edition of Locked On Cougars coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks and a whole litany of other options along the way. Plus, you can combine those live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout from our friends at FanDuel. Keeps every game more exciting, especially when your team is making that late push along the way. And I also add this. If you're not interested maybe in basketball, they've got football for you guys. You want to put the money down on BYU hammering TCU tomorrow night? Got that option. BYU basketball in action against UConn. No matter what the Kennard Davis situation entails, you can go out there and take advantage of it from our friends over at FanDuel, and it's got a million other options beyond that. NFL, NBA, and Major League Baseball. They got it all. So take advantage of it today. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to sign up today and play your game with FanDuel, as they are the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. If you have not signed up for the Locked On Cougars Insider Group, what in the world are you waiting for? Join us today. Get the inside scoop on all things BYU. And, it's $5 a month to get that inside intel that you crave. And it comes right to your phone in the form of a text message. I call it the kicker. The best part about this is you get a 14-day free trial before you're charged a single penny. And I will just also add this. Some pretty incredible perks are coming down the pipe for our insider group members. And if you want to get in on the action before those hit, well, join us today on the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. All right. So let's talk about some interesting headlines that have come out this week. So earlier this week, the ESPN Bottom 10, which is written by Ryan McGee, who's been a long time writer for ESPN covering college football, NASCAR. He hosts a show called Marty McGee on ESPN Radio that I think is absolutely hilarious. That's beside the point. But he does an ESPN Bottom 10 where they talk about the 10 worst college football programs on any given week. And the number 5 spot in those articles, and I'm a longtime reader of the Bottom 10. I've read it through multiple iterations of multiple writers who have written it. It just so happens that Ryan writes it now. Well, the number 5 spot in Ryan's iteration is reserved for the best team that had the worst week, in a way, I guess is probably the best way to describe it. And he put BYU in that slot by virtue of their 29-7 loss to Texas Tech. The problem is he took an insensitive shot at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and its founder, Joseph Smith. And while I am one who is, I get it. I kind of grew up with the church kind of being a punchline in a lot of jokes. It's what Mormons, like members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, it's kind of just been in pop culture forever. Well, there was outcry, and I kind of appreciate the fact that it didn't necessarily come from people necessarily all inside the church. There were other people on the outside saying, if this were happening in other religions, there'd be national outrage. You'd have like referendums on multiple TV programs about this if it was used in any other context with any other religion and the respective founders. So Ryan McGee issued an apology, and wrote a new tidbit in his top 10 and saying, well, you're still stuck in the number 5 spot, BYU. Okay, great, Ryan. But it just tells me that there is still a lot of, I don't want to say disrespect for BYU. There's a lot of people out there who take pot shots for no reason other than to get a cheap laugh. Hopefully that makes sense. And like I said, I've kind of been used to this my entire life, but I'm also sensitive that this is the religion that I am a faithful adherent of, that I espouse to believe in. The way I kind of live my life is in concert with the tenets of this faith. And when it's denigrated, and the founder of it, Joseph Smith, who we regard as a prophet, the guy who restored the gospel of Jesus Christ to the church, to the world, it irks me ever so much. And we already had a bit of a national referendum with the BYU and F the Mormons chant that happened at Colorado. I was there in person and experienced it firsthand. We saw the Big 12 take action, and I'm sure somebody at ESPN took action and told Ryan, dude, take it down, fix it, issue a public apology, whatever. Just stop doing this. Maybe at some point people will stop doing it, but at the same time, I'm also not holding my breath. So that was one thing that I was worried about when it came to some of the headlines around BYU football this week, because that's one thing. Obviously, just it irks, it kind of vexing. I don't know it, but the other thing that is absolutely crazy to me is we now have Mack Rhoades stepping down from the College Football Playoff Committee, and the Big 12 has put none other than Mark Harlan into the seat that Mack Rhoades vacated as a member of the College Football Playoff Committee. Now, on its head, Mark Harlan already has experience on the College Football Playoff Committee. He served for a short stint in 2023 before Utah joined the Big 12. They were members of the Pac-12 at the time, due to a circumstance. I don't remember what the exact circumstance was. So his experience and already understanding the machinations and how things work with the College Football Playoff, the selection process, all that different stuff, made him a very, very natural fit to assume that spot on the playoff committee that Mack Rhoades vacated by taking a personal leave of absence from Baylor and also from the College Football Playoff Committee. And by the way, best wishes to Mack Rhoades. Whatever happened, hope he gets it figured out, and hopefully he can get back into the saddle, to use that expression, at some point down the line. So I understand completely. Trust me, I've got no problem acknowledging that why the Big 12 nominated and ultimately the College Football Playoff Committee, whatever group, accepted the nomination of having Mark Harlan join that group. The issue I have is this is a guy who, after BYU beat Utah a season ago, literally walked on the field in the middle of a play. And there's some jokes about, hey, we actually have an athletic director sitting on the CFP committee who's got on-field experience. Trust me, those are the self-aware jokes that I always appreciate. My issue is even though Mark Harlan is on this committee and he is required to recuse himself from any conversations involving the University of Utah. Oof. Can you see where I'm going here? Like, we are going to have a situation one way or the other if either one of Utah or BYU is in the running for the College Football Playoff, whether it's as an at-large bid or if they're on the bubble, whatever it is. And if BYU wins out, and including winning the Big 12 championship, so reeling off 4 straight wins, that'll be taken out of the hands of the committee because it's an automatic bid. You win the Big 12 title, you're going to be in the College Football Playoff. It's just guaranteed. It's just part of the parameters that the College Football Playoff has right now. This is a guy who made it very clear about his feelings on joining the Big 12. After that game against BYU last year, we were happy to be in the Big 12, but tonight we are not. And I know that it may have been a heat of the moment thing, but considering, the reputation of Utah when they joined this league, it wasn't a very, very good look. So I am genuinely curious to see if Mark Harlan can swallow his pride, and let's say that it comes down to either BYU or Utah. And I know he's supposed to recuse himself, obviously, when it comes to discussions involving the Utes, because that's the requirement as a CFP committee member. If you have a conflict of interest, you recuse yourself from those conversations. You can recuse yourself all you want, but he's the Utah athletic director. And this just may be me being worried about nothing, but at the same time, it's going to be a storyline either way. Either his own fans, speaking of Utah, are going to hate his guts, or BYU fans are going to cry conspiracy. Like, that's just the way I kind of see things going. Now, if both Utah and BYU fall flat on their face and are nowhere near getting an opportunity to play in the College Football Playoff, then it becomes a nothing burger. But so long as these two, which BYU being ranked 12th and Utah being ranked 13th, who are very much on the periphery of the college football playoff and very well can find themselves in contention for an at-large bid, if one or the other gets in and the other gets left out, get ready for fireworks, everybody. It's not going to be a fun time on the interwebs if this, what I've described, plays out in real time. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but keep an eye on it all the same. All right, that's going to do it for today's edition of the show. I guess it's technically a special edition. We've done 2 full editions of the podcast today. I'll have some smaller stuff for you guys in the lead up to the games tomorrow. Both BYU taking on UConn in basketball at 5 o'clock, then followed by BYU football against TCU at 8:15. But once again, my prediction, BYU 31, TCU 17, and we'll see how it all shakes out on the field tomorrow night. And as always, thank you for subscribing, rating, reviewing, sharing with your family and friends. If you've not done so already today, click that little thumbs up icon if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're listening to the audio format, like I said, like, subscribe, rate, and review, share it with your family and friends, and help us continue to build this audience. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen today, and come back tomorrow and be an everydayer right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.